Hey everybody and welcome. While the Twisted Metal game series has been dormant for a number of years, a comeback is in the works in the shape of a Peacock original live-action series. For those unfamiliar, the Twisted Metal games, mostly, featured a destructive tournament in which many disturbed individuals would drive deadly custom vehicles in an attempt to be the last driver standing. The winner would have one wish granted by the mysterious Calypso, a once-dead man with demonic entanglements that grant him strange powers. That's the gist of many of the games, but they've never completely connected together into one solid continuity. Original creator David Jaffe preferred to keep the stories fast and loose, only continuing certain threads forward and ignoring most others. Later games in the series were even more standalone and experimental when it came to plot. Twisted Metal Black was a more grounded and gritty reboot starring mental patients, which may or may not exist solely in the mind of series mascot Needles Kane. Twisted Metal Small Brawl was a Toy Story-esque romp with young versions of recognizable characters battling with RC cars rather than murder machines. And the most recent title, known as Twisted Metal 2012, was yet another gritty take on the franchise, this time with a heavy emphasis on plot. It featured only 3 drivers during story mode, presenting their horrible tales with Grindhouse-inspired cutscenes. I'm giving y'all this primer solely to prove a point. Twisted Metal is known for constantly reinventing itself and going in unforeseen directions. Dozens of characters have come and gone from the franchise, several different game development studios took the reins since the old PS1 days, and the original creators have little, if any, say on where it'll go in the future. I'll admit, I was pretty surprised when this streaming series was announced. Based on a concept by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the same duo known mostly for Deadpool movies and Zombieland, this series is taking another detour, this time into post-apocalyptic territory. More specifically, this iteration of Twisted Metal is seen primarily as a half-hour comedy taking place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, starring Anthony Mackie in the lead role. From the official press release,
Anthony Mackie stars as John Doe, a smart-ass milkman who talks as fast as he drives. With no memory of his past, John gets a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make his wish of finding community come true, but only if he can survive an onslaught of savage vehicular combat. Mackie will also executive produce the upcoming series. Twisted Metal is a high-octane action comedy based on an original take by Deadpool scribes Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick about a motor-mouthed outsider offered a chance at a better life, but only if he can successfully deliver a mysterious package across a post-apocalyptic wasteland. With the help of a trigger-happy car thief, he'll face savage marauders driving vehicles of destruction and other dangers of the open road, including a deranged clown who drives an all-too-familiar ice cream truck.
It's also been rumored from day one that Will Arnett, an executive producer on this project, would play Sweet Tooth, though that remains unconfirmed. One of the most enjoyable aspects of the TM games has always been the colorful and/or grotesque cast of characters driving their unique demolition derby abominations into battle. So far, it seems we may not be getting a whole lot of familiar faces, at least not in the same way you may expect. There is a character known as John Doe in Twisted Metal Black who drove roadkill and was a tragic figure of sorts. Mackie's character isn't necessarily an adaptation of him, though, since John Doe is a generic name given to people whose identity is unknown. Sometime after the initial series announcement, we heard actress Stephanie Beatriz was hired to play a character named Quiet. The official announcement describes Quiet as
A ferocious, badass car thief who acts purely on instinct. You couldn't stop her any more than a manhole could stop a volcano.
the fuck?
Coming from a community that oppressed her into silence, Quiet's wish is to find her place in this dark, chaotic world. But when she becomes clouded by her need for revenge, Quiet forms an unlikely antagonistic bond with John Doe.
No, there's no characters from the game called Quiet, unless someone had a brain fart and accidentally stole from Konami. So this is an original character made for the show, seemingly the second half of a buddy comedy duo alongside John Doe. I'll always prefer the idea of creating new characters instead of butchering existing ones, so this is fine by me. And while I'm not familiar with this actress, she seems to have played a fan-favorite character on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and if true, that's a good sign. The next update makes me raise an eyebrow, though. Recently, it was announced that Thomas Hayden Church has been hired onto the show. Church is playing Agent Stone, and frankly, I'm very confused by what has been announced for this character. This version of Stone is
A cold, unyielding post-apocalyptic highway patrolman who rules the roads with a silver tongue and a twisted iron fist, prosecuting even the smallest crimes with the harshest of judgments. Stone will stop at nothing to bring law and order back to the divided states of America, and will kill anyone in his path who defies his power.
I'm probably not the only TM fan confused. See, there are 3 versions of Agent Stone in the games. In the original Twisted Metal, Agent Stone was a secret agent modeled after James Bond. He drove a sleek red sports car called Crimson Fury. The second appeared in Small Brawl, and was basically a young James Bond cosplayer who controls an RC version of Crimson Fury. The third, and the one who most closely resembles this new TV version, is from Twisted Metal Black. He was a police officer, more specifically a SWAT team member, who drove that game's version of Outlaw. He was someone who made a grave mistake and desperately wanted to make it right. The thing is, the police version of Agent Stone was a black man. If they're taking more inspiration from this iteration of the character, even loosely, then I would have preferred they hire a black actor for the role. With that said, Thomas Hayden Church has put in some great performances in the past, though I find him to be a mixed bag of an actor overall. So I'm more than a little curious to see how things play out with this character in the show, especially since he's described as a villain. My only hope is that they don't use him to shoehorn a ham-fisted ACAB message into this series. In terms of casting, the most recent announcement raised some eyebrows as well. Scream's Neve Campbell just joined the show in a recurring role as a character named Raven. There's been no official description of this character, so there's no telling what her role will be specifically. Twisted Metal Black had a character named Raven who drove Shadow. Raven was a fairly stereotypical goth girl with dark hair, black clothes, depressed mannerisms, and a habit of cutting herself. Whether or not Neve Campbell's Raven is an adaptation of that, or a new character altogether who happens to share the same name, remains to be seen. The most important thing to keep in mind here is that because this streaming series is not based around a Twisted Metal tournament, none of the characters featured will necessarily be drivers. As hilarious as it is to imagine Neve freaking Campbell hamming it up as an unhinged goth queen raining hot lead on grandmas and monster trucks, well, she could just as easily just be someone who hands the mysterious package off to John Doe and pops up for a couple of brief cameos later. It's important to temper expectations in all regards, especially the action. We have no idea how much car combat we'll actually get here, and while the synopsis teases an encounter with Needles and his ice cream truck, for all we know that could be one of the only major vehicular combat scenes. There's also no telling how good any of that action will look. CGI overall these days is looking, well, pretty shitty. Halo spent $10 million per episode and featured gunfights that often looked worse than moments from the most recent games. And sadly, we know Hollywood shies away from practical effects. There's a big talent shortage in Hollywood currently. Look no further than Halo, Moon Knight, and She-Hulk's pathetic CGI for proof of that. And those were much higher profile projects than a Twisted Metal adaptation, so, well, again, don't get your hopes too high here. Now, there's not a whole lot to say about the behind-the-scenes talent, but let's do a quick rundown. As I said earlier, Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick came up with the original pitch, so if the post-apocalyptic setting sucks, then I guess we can blame them. They don't seem to have any hands-on involvement with the show after that early stage, however, though we'll have to see about that. Will Arnett and Mark Foreman are notable executive producers, and the former is, again, rumored to play Sweet Tooth. There's several more producers, but honestly, it's not important info. So far, it seems writing duties will be handled by Cobra Kai writer and story editor Michael Jonathan Smith. He was heavily involved with Cobra Kai, and since I generally love that show, it's nice to know there's an above-average chance that the scripts will be decent. Hopefully. Thus far, we don't have any word about any other writers, at least that I was able to find today. The only confirmed director so far is Kateo Sakurai, seemingly best known for the Eric Andre show and a recent movie called Bad Trip. I've never seen any of his projects, so I don't know. So I really don't know what to expect with this upcoming series, but you know, just because of the overall quality of most shows these days, I ain't holding my breath. Hope for the best, expect the worst. Honestly, I'm just hoping those rumors that this is leading to an all-new Twisted Metal game turn out to be true. If that's the only good thing to come from this, that's okay with me. I'm Baffled, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!